Hey everybody, here we are on Tuesday, just getting my light. It's a beautiful day out today, only for filming. It's overcast here in Bracebridge, Ontario. Okay, what a delicious topic. First of all, I'm thrilled that when we took a vote in this group, taking pleasure breaks throughout the day was something that so many of you felt inspired to find out more about. And I would say that even the thought, even the desire to find pleasure in life right now, in ordinary times, it is difficult. And right now, it just says so much about you. So I want to say, it's so beautiful to be in this topic. It's so beautiful that we want more pleasure in our lives. What a gorgeous, what an epic self-care practice that is. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I have I have 4 philosophies of pleasure that I want to share with you. And then I have 3 ways that you can start adding pleasure in right now or adding on to what you already do. The 4 philosophies I think are really important because they allow us to make some decisions about how we view pleasure in our lives. And once we come into a certain decision or a certain identity around pleasure, then it becomes much easier to find it in our life. So that's what we're going to do. If you're here watching live, say hi. Let me know what you do for pleasure, or let me know what your biggest challenge is. And if you're watching the replay, let me know. Do you have a pleasure challenge that I can help you with? Beautiful. Okay. Number 1 philosophy of pleasure. Pleasure is an orientation. Pleasure is an orientation. And what that means is to become a mistress of pleasure, you must always be oriented towards pleasure. So if you think of pleasure as like the sun, and you could either be facing the sun or you could be facing away from the sun. Facing the sun, in this case, facing pleasure, is about knowing where I'm going, focusing on it, seeing it, feeling the heat of it, feeling the call of it. That is my orientation towards pleasure, which means that I'm always looking for it, which means that I'm always adding it in, which means that everything that I do is oriented around pleasure. Guess what this way is? And sometimes we're here. Sometimes I'm here. This is like no pleasure, grumpy, all the bullshit, the dark stuff, the moodiness, and we all have it. You're going to go between both. So when I say pleasure is an orientation, I mean that when we find ourselves facing this direction, away from pleasure, all we have to do is notice that and be like, where's my orientation? Am I facing away from pleasure or towards it? Now, how do we get from here to here? You will find your own way. But here's my recommendation. The fastest way to change your brain is through your body. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but let me ask you this. How many times have you been spiraling in your thoughts, in your moodiness, in all your feels that are not helpful, and you just stay there. You just fucking stay there. It happens to me, right? We just spiral, and the thoughts aren't helpful, and our brain is not helping us get out of the state. We just are staying there, and it's like this, where we get stuck in the whirlpool. Here's what I do to change the state of my body. I have 2 songs. One song is like my jump around song, and this is just for me to shake and jump around and get that shit out of my body, even without knowing exactly what it is, even without knowing how to fix it. I'm not interested in fixing it. I'm just interested in like getting it out of my body. Thank you, Rainu. And then I have a turn on song. And this is a song for me right now. It's this song called Dripisha by Todrick Hall. I can't even get enough of this song. It turns on my naughty, it turns on my sense of fun. So I have 2 songs, and that is the fastest way for me to go from here to here, from change from one state to another. So Pleasure is an orientation, and when you realize that you are oriented towards something else, which might be punishment, rigidity, control, earning it, which we'll get to later, then all you're going to do is just shake that shit out of your body, and then you're going to reorient yourself. Okay. 2, decide that your pleasure doesn't have to be earned. This is a huge one. So here's an example. You have a great day. You get your to-do list done. You have that great conversation. You check that thing off your list. You finish your course. You watch the video. You reach out to that person that you've been meaning to. You fix something in your house. Now you've earned your pleasure. Now it's the glass of wine, the hot bath, the whatever you do for pleasure. That is easily accessible pleasure, because most of us have been taught that pleasure is something that you earn. And that's how I grew up. You get a carrot at the end, you get a reward at the end of work, which I actually really love. I love to be rewarded after hard work. The issue is, if the hard work is continuous, there is no end to the work, therefore there is no reward. It's like this constant hard work with no reward, because we can't see where the hard work stops. So decide that you do not need to earn pleasure. So when you have a day that feels great, you're on fire, you're aligned, you're congruent, you're feeling good, it's easy to have pleasure. And I will invite you to do exactly the same thing on the days where you do nothing on your list. You're completely unproductive. You fuck stuff up. You forget about stuff. You mess things up. You lie on your couch all day. That is a day for pleasure. Doesn't that sound outrageous? So decide that pleasure doesn't have to be earned, that your pleasure doesn't have to be earned. That's a huge one. That in itself is a practice. So for me, hot bath is one of my greatest pleasures. I love the feeling of heat. I love being immersed in the water, and I love doing what I can do in the bath. I'm usually reading, or I'm just thinking, I'm listening to music or a podcast. I love it. I have hot baths on the good days and the bad days, because I've just decided that I don't have to earn my pleasure. The other thing that you can do is look at kids. If you have kids in your life, a child would think it was so outrageous that there's certain days that you're allowed to have fun and feel good, and then certain days that you're not. Right? Look to the children. So we can look to the children for that example. Okay. So we've got pleasure as an orientation. We have decide pleasure does not have to be earned. Number 3, reading my list here. Pleasure is a felt sense, not a to-do list. Here's what I mean. When it comes to self-care, and if we were to Google self-care, right, we would find all of these lists of things that talk about what self-care is, when to know we're doing it. Like if you work out regularly, or if you eat well, or if you get a pedi and a mani, when we could do that. If you do this, then you're doing self-care, then you're having pleasure. Awesome, check it off the list. And I think women naturally have a tendency to want to do well at things. Like even with pleasure, we're like, I'm gonna rock pleasure, I'm gonna do pleasure. So what I would invite you to think about is pleasure is a felt sense, not a to-do list. Here's what that means. First of all, what your pleasure is not what my pleasure is. We don't have the same pleasures because we are not the same woman. Hot bath might be excruciating for you, and it's amazing for me. You never have to match your idea of pleasure with anybody else's. How do you know that it's pleasurable for you? It feels good. That's it. With that idea is you measure the feeling of it, not the quantity. So, for example, say in the morning, something so pleasurable for you is like watching an inspiring documentary. And you watch it for half an hour during the day, and you do nothing else pleasurable during the day. And then you get to the end of the day and you're like, man, I just can't get this pleasure thing down. Like I didn't do anything. And because you're looking at it like a to-do list. Did I do enough? What was the quantity of it? Instead of a felt sense, the way that you were so enraptured with the documentary, the way it inspired so many thoughts, the way your like body was so alive and your energy was alive, that's the felt sense of pleasure. So tune into the felt sense, not the to-do list, not the measuring of it. And here's the other thing. Know when it's not pleasurable. Sometimes we have an idea of what we think pleasure is, and it may have been in the past, and it's no longer pleasurable. We change. We are constantly evolving. So the practice of staying oriented to pleasure is also this very finely tuned sense of what pleasure is for you in this moment, in this mood, in this body, in this time, because it will not stay the same. You may have loved getting your fingers done, and for you that was something that was so pleasurable, and then all of a sudden it's like, I was just getting my nails done, I don't have the same pleasure. If you stick with that just because it's what you used to do, you're diminishing your pleasure light, you're diminishing your pleasure bank. So when we start tuning into also what is not pleasurable, then we're like, that used to work for me, it doesn't anymore. And then we can get excited. What do I like now? That's exciting. What do I like now? The other day, you can let me know if you're like me. You have shopping carts in lots of places, but they're unfinished. You like go back, you add on a few things, then you look at what you already have and you're like, I'm not sure about that, and you take it off, or you save it for later because maybe you do like it. And you might have a few carts in different places under your accounts that are just like floating there. I've had this Amazon cart of certain clothing items, and it has been floating there for a few months. And I actually love shopping. I love spending money, and I'm very good at it. And every time I went to this cart, I was not feeling pleasurable about it. I was like, I'm not excited about it. I'm not really anticipating the delivery. I just don't feel, it's just not exciting me right now. And so I would close the cart because I could recognize that it was not in my pleasure. And we have to be just so fierce about our pleasure. We cannot play mediocre. We cannot be like, it feels pretty good. Kind of feels good. No, let's do better. Let's be like, nope, that's not good enough for me. Done. And then yesterday, I was like, okay, this feels good. I went back on and it was pleasurable. I felt excited about looking at my items. I felt excited about how I was going to pair them together with stuff that I already have. And when I hit that click, I was like, that was pleasurable. I'm excited to get that package. So know what's also not pleasurable. Okay. Number 4, practice makes a mistress. What do I mean by that? The art of being oriented towards your pleasure is a practice, meaning you never nail it, meaning it's never finished. So the way to think about that is it's something that we are constantly learning about ourselves. It's something that we are constantly playing with. It is a place where we are constantly able to learn something new about ourselves. As old pleasures don't work for us anymore and they die away and there is room for new pleasure. There's also something beautiful that happens when we practice pleasure. As we get stronger in our orientation, we start off like little things, little pleasure things. And then we build up our sense of what turns us on. We get finely tuned to what we like and what we don't like. And we get faster at being able to distinguish where we are. And then our pleasures get bigger, just naturally. We don't have to make them bigger. They just happen. It's like you go to the gym and you start off with the 5-pound weights, and like you work up and then you're like, I can do 10-pound weights. And it just happens because you're building the muscle. So practice makes a mistress. And the practice is fun, and the practice never ends because there's always something more. There's always that bigger pleasure. Maybe even there's always that outrageous pleasure. But when we start off, we can't get to the outrageous pleasure yet. We're just starting building that muscle. So pleasure is a practice. And the great news about that is that you just don't learn how to do it, master it, and then you're done. If you want to orient towards pleasure, it's this beautiful practice that you will have for the rest of your life. Okay. How are we doing? We feeling good? Okay, here are 3 ways to add pleasure into your life right now without even having to do anything else, mostly. Number 1, add pleasure to things you already do. This is so basic. It sounds so simple, and we sometimes forget about this idea of just adding it into stuff we already do. So, for example, when you're in your shower, most women I know, the shower is like all business. It's like goong, goong, goong. Like you have the same, you ever notice that we have the same dance that we do when we're in the shower? Like you always wash your left arm first, and then you always go around your head. It's like we just follow the same pathway. And the way we touch our skin might be just utilitarian. We're just like cleaning the skin, no big deal. What are some things, if you have a shower every day, what are some things that you could do to add pleasure to your shower? There is an invitation in pleasure that asks of you, do you believe life is here to delight you? Do you believe that your body is here to delight you? Do you believe that sounds and sights and views and nature and the universe is here to delight you? If you say, yeah, I could jam on that for a while, that sounds pretty cool, then pleasure becomes available everywhere. So in the shower, what would it be like to just actually slow down and wash your skin gently? And not with anything rough, but just with softness. Boom, pleasure. That's pleasurable. That's letting your body delight you, letting the water delight you. What would happen if you played music in the shower? Would that be pleasurable for you? What would it be like to lay out clothing that you're really excited about wearing, even if it's just for yourself? Because I know we're not doing a lot of things with each other right now. What would it be like to lay out an outfit and put it on your bed or your floor before you go into the shower? Would that be pleasurable? When you make your morning coffee or your morning tea, what could you add that is pleasurable to just that thing? So what I've been doing is first of all, I make my coffee at night because it is so pleasurable for me to just be able to press the button. Like I don't want to do any work, and I get up early in the morning, so I don't want to do any work. And I've started adding cardamom and cinnamon to my coffee. And it is a little thing, and it is so pleasurable. And when my cup of coffee is ready, I hold it in my hand, and I feel the warmth of the coffee, and then I sniff it. And it's that smell of coffee and cinnamon, or coffee and cardamom, that fills my body with pleasure. How long do I do that for? It's like 5 seconds. But it's this building up of orientation towards pleasure. How can I make this more pleasurable for me? Where is my pleasure in this? It's the moment of feeling that warm water in the shower. It's the moment of feeling my fingers on my scalp as I wash my hair. Pleasure. So good. If you have any other ideas of things that you do during the day that you could add pleasure to. And really, when we talk pleasure, on one level, the real vanilla in my coffee. Delicious. Nikki, drinking coffee. We'll talk. I love that. It's like, and the real stuff, not the artificial stuff, the real stuff. Beautiful. I was going to say something else. COVID brain, it's gone. What else do you do that you could add pleasure to? Pleasure is about the senses. Pleasure is about taking a walk around the block. And again, it's this idea of letting the universe delight you. Being like, here I am, universe. I am this like red-blooded, hot, alive, juicy woman. What do you got for me today? Ooh, sunshine on my face. Ooh, the birds singing for me on my behalf. That sight of beautiful flowers. or the sound of the wind through the trees. So senses is a beautiful place to pick up our pleasure. Number 2, how you can think of pleasure and add it into your day. Think of it as play, as in, like, we don't take pleasure seriously. We take it seriously because we want it, but we actually don't take it seriously. And what would it be like to play with pleasure? So when we think of the word play, what we know about the word play is that there's no wrong answer. For example, sometimes when I am orientated towards like the shit, and for me that's like, I'm just pissed off, I'm resistant, I'm angry as shit. That's my opposite orientation. I just completely think of it as play. Yes, there's no wrong answers. I can go through a list of pleasures. I'm like, well, I usually have a hot bath, so I'm gonna have a hot bath. I go and I have a hot bath, and I like get out of that hot bath, and I'm still pissed off. If I was to take it seriously, I'd be like, oh, I failed at pleasure. Now my hot bath doesn't even work. Now what am I gonna do? I'm like, oh no, it's play. What's next? Okay, I'm gonna find a little piece of chocolate. I'm gonna have a little bite of chocolate. Maybe that's my pleasure. Doesn't work, pissed off. Okay, what's next? We're just playing. There are no wrong answers. There is no end game. And what might happen in that moment is I find something that I never knew gave me pleasure before. I'm like, oh, now I have 20 things on my list, on my go-to list. It's just play. It's epic self-care, and it's just play. And here's my 3rd suggestion for you. Get a pleasure buddy. Have you ever, like, accountability does work. Get a pleasure buddy. So you just reach out to somebody who you think might be interested, and you say, look, I need to find more pleasure in my life. Do you want to be my pleasure buddy? So what that could mean is every morning we wake up and we're like, I'm going to try this today for pleasure. Or maybe it's every night we say, we brag about the pleasurable things that we did that day, whatever worked, whatever didn't work. So, doing things in community is so huge. Sometimes we just don't have the capacity to do it on our own, especially when we get into a shitty space. That's when you're like, fuck pleasure so much, this bullshit. And then your pleasure buddy is like, hey, this is what I just did for pleasure. How are you doing? And you're like, I hate you, but I love you. Thank you. So a pleasure buddy would be my recommendation. You could do it for 7 days. Let's do 7 days of just orientating ourselves towards pleasure and see what happens. It's so beautiful. Okay, let's sum it up. So pleasure is an orientation. Huge. Decide that your pleasure doesn't need to be earned. Think of the children. Pleasure is a felt sense, meaning you feel it when it's there for you, and you will feel it when it is not there for you. So we don't hold on to the to-do list. We don't hold on to what used to work. We only hold on to what is real and true for us now. And practice makes the mistress. We just practice, we practice, we practice. And we go from small to big. 3 things that you can do. 1 is add pleasure to stuff that you already do. We don't really need anything else on our plates right now. You don't have to add anything new onto your plate. Be like a challenge. How could I make sleeping more pleasurable? Is it like the perfect way that I put my pillows? Is it that I change the position that I sleep in? Is it that I move my bed? Is it that I listen to something pleasurable as I fall asleep? Is it that I change the song, my alarm that wakes me up? Thanks, very new. Yes, pleasurable. Just start off with what you're already doing. Think of it as play. What play means, there's no wrong answer. You never get it wrong. You never fail. There's no end game. There's just the delight in play. Just play. And finally, get a pleasure buddy. Reach out to somebody. Do you know how many people are desperate for pleasure right now? Do you know how many women are, like all of us, are in a place where what we need is somebody to reach out and say, hey, I gotta reach for some more pleasure or fun or play or juiciness right now. Do you want to do it with me? They're like, oh my God, thank the goddess that you did it. I had this yearning, I had this calling, but I just have zero capacity to do it on my own, and I had zero energy even to reach out. So thank you for reaching out. So do a pleasure, buddy. I just want to celebrate the fact that you are here listening to pleasure in a time when it feels both incredibly difficult and also complicated, because we know that so many people are, for so many people, pleasure right now is a total privilege. So I love that you're on the journey. I love that you're thinking about it. I love that you're questioning it. I am too. And I am as passionate about finding pleasure right now in my daily life as you are. So thank you for being here. Yeah, let me know. How does it work? What did you learn? What did you discover? And pleasure is queen. You are a queen. We are queens. Love you so much. Thank you for being here.